victory. 1 dirham currently buying 5.5 Turkish lira. 5 years ago, it bought just 1.2.
Taxing matters.
Taxing matters indeed. Tax on a Tuesday. Well, tax on a Thursday this week as well, because that's the day, T-Day, if you like, when tax will come in. Corporate tax will be introduced this coming Thursday, June the 1st. Big question, and look, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid the story at the moment. It is just about everywhere, and you can't go with the excuse that you didn't know, you weren't forewarned, because certainly everyone has been forewarned. As to whether businesses are ready remains to be seen. A question we'll put now to a man who's been kind enough to join us live in studio. He's probably being pulled from pillar to post at the moment by clients. Neil Guthrie is Senior Director of Finance and Tax at Rethink UAE. Neil, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Nice to put faces to names.
Look, good to have you with us. A face and a name that is in much demand at the moment, one would assume. Let's look at it from the wide angle first and foremost. Are businesses ready?
It depends. It varies from business to business. There's a lot for them to be thinking about. They need to be informing themselves, of course, from the perspective of understanding what's in the legislation. They need to be, the administration, of course, needs to be ready. They have to have their accounting, they have to be able to do their accounting in sufficient detail. So businesses are keen to learn. They're very keen to learn. Not necessarily all businesses are keen to start, particularly some free zone clients waiting for further clarification on the famous qualifying income, what will be subject to, will not be subject to tax. So a lot of them are saying, well, we hear what you say, but we'd like to wait a little while until the cabinet decision on qualifying income comes out. And we've had 18 or so cabinet decisions in the last few weeks, and an explanatory document as well. So a lot's come out from the government, but nothing has come out on qualifying income at this stage, and that's the one that people are really waiting to hear about.
So what are you seeing on the coalface at the moment? I mean, you mentioned there, it's definitely a mixed bag in terms of those that are preparing themselves, those that are trying to ignore the inevitable as well. What's the sort of the biggest mistakes you're seeing at present?
I think the biggest mistake is just not fully grasping the magnitude of what has to be done and the urgency. And people are saying, well, if I've got financial year equivalent to the calendar year, then I don't actually have to file my tax return until September 2025. So I've got bags of time. But actually, the truth of the matter is you need to be prepared in advance of your financial year. The opening balances in your accounts, for example, have to be compliant for transfer pricing, the infamous transfer pricing. So you have to be ready in advance so you can start processing your transactions for the whole year and be compliant. So have that granularity of accounting such that you have all the information necessary to do your tax return. There's a lot to be done. The provisions of the Act are very detailed, clearly, and there's an awful lot to consider. And so at Rethink, we have our tax team which do advisory. So they'll take the knowledge of the business, overlay the provisions of the legislation, come out with a report which makes recommendations about how to be compliant and how to optimize your tax situation. And then our finance and tax team come in with their, say, slightly more detailed knowledge of the business and a solid grounding of the Act and the legislation. And they actually implement on a practical level. They either implement it themselves or they help the client's administration and finance team do the implementation.
Neil, last week, Brandy introduced me to a new word that I hadn't heard before. It refers to a bird from your part of the world, Brandy Scott. Can you put your microphone on and tell us what that word is?
I'm trying to remember what we even discussed last week. It was 100 years ago.
Ostriching.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
What is ostriching?
Stick in your head and say it.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
Some clients, yes. In fairness, I think the majority of clients are definitely not sticking their head in the sand, but a few of them are, yes, I would say so.
Literally the sand.
Yeah, yes, literally.
Is there a sort of, I mean, again, it goes back to this sort of idea of reluctance as well. What you seem to be suggesting is, regardless of where people are in the process at the moment, they need to get their ducks in the row, because the next financial year is going to come around really quickly. And if you haven't got that in place before the next financial year, you're in trouble.
Not totally in trouble from day one, but if you don't address it very quickly thereafter, then you start to have a backlog, and then you can't catch up. So it's not like the 1st of June, for example, is like the Millennium Bug or anything like that. Nothing's going to change on that day. But you need to be very soon thereafter, getting your ducks in order for sure. And the legislation, the corporate tax, it impacts every aspect of a business, from your business model to your legal entity structure, through your accounting, your policies and procedures, resources, you name it. It impacts so many things.
And are these, in terms of the standards by which people will be judged as well? I mean, are there fixed international accounting standards when it comes to things like corporate tax?
Absolutely, yes. And IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, is what's specified. There is a slight below 50 million dirhams of turnover. A simplified IFRS is permitted, and below 3 million dirhams, then cash accounting is permitted. But what's specified in the regulations is effectively IFRS, which is the gold standard in reporting, and it means that what was formerly best practice is now just going to become completely standard compliance. It's really going to involve companies upping their game in terms of their finance and accounting and administration, for sure.
Because that's one thing I've heard, and maybe it's worth us addressing that today. People say, yeah, we've been here before, etc., but we'll get another 6-month hiatus on this one, etc. We'll get 6 months to sort things out. That doesn't seem to be the case yet.
No, it won't be the case. It wasn't the case with VAT. It will not be the case. It wasn't the case with economic substance regulations. There will not be any delay. It's coming. It's here. And we have to be prepared for it. It's reality.
What's your advice, Neil, for those that are listening in? We're getting lots of text messages, people with a number of questions here. If people are concerned whether they've got the right documentation, if they've got concerns, what's your advice to businesses 48 hours away from T-Day?
Well, you've got two choices. Either you inform yourself, or you contact a third party like Rethink to help you to understand what's required. Many companies are perfectly capable of doing their own or understanding it their own. They've got their finance manager, CFO, who can grasp it. Others haven't got that level of finance support, so they need a third party like Rethink to help them in that regard.
And just finally on that, we've got literally 30 seconds. You mentioned there teams will have finance teams in-house, etc., but not all of those finance teams might be au fait with all things tax.
Correct. And it can be a blended thing. We can work alongside the in-house finance team, or we can provide the full support.
Listen, it's going to be a busy one for you.
Absolutely.
But we cleared the diary for this week. Neil, good to have you join us live here in studio. Big thanks to Neil Guthrie, who's the Senior Director at Finance and Tax, busy man for Rethink UAE.
Dubai Eye 103.8 traffic.
With Yas Island Abu Dhabi.